Welcome back to the Red Dice Diaries, and it's time for a Monday Moan. Now, before we get started with the main crux of the episode, I've got a voicemail message of Colin Green, aka Spike Pit, legendary anchorite. Take it away, Colin.
Hi John, it's Colin, Spike Pit. Hope this message finds you well. Enjoyed your episode on settings. The more I think about, agnostic versus integrated, I think I'm just on the fence. Conflicted Colin is conflicted again. No surprises there. But man, I was super surprised to hear that you've enjoyed my kind of walk through the Gardens of Yin. Hope it lives up to expectations and you enjoy the product. I loved it myself, but I do like a little bit of that whimsy, shall we say. Anyway, all the best. I'll catch you later.
Thanks very much for that, Colin. Yeah, I've not had a chance to read through the Gardens of Yin fully yet, although I've had a flick through it, and it looks pretty cool. I very much enjoyed your walkthrough, and since our sort of upcoming Castles and Crusades game is ostensibly going to be set just in a single city, which is that of Great London in the Midlands, I don't know if anyone remembers Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman. They did like a BBC TV series of it first, and then there was a book, and I think it's been redone as a graphic novel and stuff like that. I forget the exact order, but that had this whole sort of subterranean, almost sort of dark fairy tale world that existed inside modern London and was accessed via these strange sort of doors or portals. Now, I really loved that idea, and it's something I've been thinking about, whether we can have sort of these little like pocket realms almost for our Greater London game. So we could still ostensibly stay inside the city, but if we wanted to have a bit of variance here and there rather than just like the straightforward urban environment, we'd be able to do that with these pocket realms. And I think the Gardens of Yin looks like a strong possibility for that. So thank you very much for putting me onto that, Colin. Much obliged. And thank you very much for the call in. I really do enjoy listening to the voicemails. So, on to the main crux of this episode, which is going to be a Monday Moan episode about the X card mechanic. Now, if you're not aware of what the X card mechanic is, effectively it's very simple. It's a playing card or something similar that has an X drawn on it, hence the name. Now, if you have a player in your game who's feeling very uncomfortable with something that's going on in the game, especially if you're like in a convention or something like that, and they maybe don't want to discuss it in detail. I mean, after all, you don't know what sort of experiences in life various people have got, especially at conventions, if it's like people you've never encountered before, or even if you're just putting together a group with people for the first time. Even if you sit down with everyone at the start and you talk about the themes of the game and stuff like that, it's possible that you may miss some things out. You may wander into other areas that perhaps do make people feel uncomfortable. Or perhaps they thought they were going to be okay with it, but when it gets round to it in the game, they're like, actually, it's making me feel very uncomfortable. The idea of the X card is at any point in time when they're feeling that way, a player can hold it up, and the idea is that the GM sort of fades the scene to black. So, for instance, if I was running a game and we were describing a particularly graphic scene where someone was being tortured for information by some sort of inquisitorial organisation, how perhaps someone at your table, God forbid, has had similar experiences, or maybe they just may be uncomfortable with the graphic nature of the description. They can hold up this X card, I can fade the scene to black, pick up later on, and in reality, nothing is particularly lost within the game. Now, you may think from the title of this Monday Moan that I'm going to actually be complaining about the X card. Well, no, not at all. I think it's a very useful device, particularly when you're getting together with a group of people that you don't know and you haven't had around the table before. Now, obviously, if you're with a group that you've been gaming with for a long time, you probably know most of their peccadillos and their sort of phobias and stuff like that, and you probably steer clear of them, or you know how far you can push it. However, the X card comes in into its own in a situation where that's not the case. Now, whenever the X card's mentioned, as with seemingly everything in RPGs now, it's a very emotive subject. And inevitably, whenever it's mentioned in a positive light, you always get someone piping up saying that, oh no, it's limiting or restricting a GM, it's placing a yoke on them, it's political correctness gone mad, and all of that sort of stuff. Now, everyone is obviously entitled to their own opinion. I'm assuming anyone listening to this is a reasonable person, and I shouldn't really have to tell you that, but everyone is entitled to their own opinion. So I'm not here to dump on people who don't like the X card. In fact, when I first encountered it, my first response was like, really? Is that necessary? And to me at the time, it probably wasn't, because I was gaming mainly with the same group of people, so I never really felt a need or had a need to use anything like that in my game. Now, as time's passed and I've started broadening my horizons when it comes to gaming groups, I've started coming into contact with people who I'm maybe not so familiar with, and I don't know what's been going on in their lives outside of the game. You know, you don't do like a deep psychological evaluation of people who play in your games. Well, at least I don't. I just tend to go with, like, do I think I'm going to get on with this person? Do they genuinely seem committed to the game? Are they an interesting person to roleplay with? That's all I look for, to be perfectly honest. Now, for me as a GM, I'd far rather, during a game, that someone who is feeling uncomfortable holds up a card, we can fade a scene to black. I'm more than confident in my ability to portray the same level of information without getting too graphic or whatever, if that's the case. And I'd far rather they do that, and then if they want to, they can discuss it with me after the session. If they don't want to, they don't have to. So I think, as well as being a great thing for the players to stop them feeling like they can't really say anything, or that if they do, they're going to be singled out and they're going to have to explain themselves, which could make them feel more uncomfortable, it's also a brilliant thing for the GM, since it offers a level of insurance to the games master, particularly in a public setting. After all, would you rather have, which of the two following scenarios, let's say you're running a game at a con, would you rather have? A player's feeling distinctly uncomfortable because of something that's happening in your game. Would you A, rather have them just hold up an X card, you can fade to black, they see that you've reacted appropriately, and, you know, they feel that, like, everything's dealt with pretty much and they can chat about it to you if they want? Or would B, rather they either leave your game straight away and complain about it to whoever's running the con, or they stay in the game feeling more and more uncomfortable and then tell people about it afterwards, complain that maybe the GM was making them feel uncomfortable, spread the word online, the whole thing gets blown out of all proportion, as such things can do nowadays. Obviously, I'm not talking about any case specifically, but there is a tendency now with things like Twitter, Facebook, etc., where if someone is upset, angry, whatever, rather than discussing it or like taking a few breaths, calming down, they can be straight online, shooting those thoughts out there. Other people will take it and run with it, and the whole situation will blow up to a massive degree. But I personally, as a GM, I'd far rather have scenario A, where they just hold up a card and the game can fade to black, and there can be a little bit of discussion afterwards if they want, and there'll be far less ill will and ill feeling between myself and the player. So if the player holds up an X card for, like, what I consider to be a valid reason, then I'm not going to bear them any ill will whatsoever. It's probably not really going to impact the game greatly, and hopefully they'll appreciate the fact that I've got these structures in place so that they don't have to feel uncomfortable and they can still continue to play a meaningful part in the game. So, as I've said, I think it's a really useful tool both for players and for GMs. And if you don't like using an X card or something similar, and you don't think it's necessary in your games, or you feel it's restricting you or yoking you in some way, then, like I say, that's your opinion. That's absolutely fine. However, for me, I personally think, actually, as a GM, it really frees me up, because I don't have to be second guessing myself all the time, going like, oh, should I put this in? Is this too graphic? Should I do this, that, and the other? Or what if someone turns up and they've got experiences with X, Y, and Z and they get offended? I don't have to worry about that as much, because I know the X cards got me covered. Now, obviously, this is all within the bounds of common sense. There's certain sort of touch subjects that I probably wouldn't go for in a convention because they're guaranteed to offend a lot of people. And if I'm running a game at a convention, I'm not in it to offend, or in a public forum of any kind, I'm not in it to offend people. I'm there to ensure that both myself and as many of the people playing as possible are having a great and enjoyable time, whoever they might be and whatever their previous life experiences may be. So, as time's gone on, I've come to like the X card more and more, to the point where I might even start using it in some of my tabletop games, as well as the games that I run in more public forums. Now, I've also had a conversation with someone on YouTube where they were saying, oh, well, what if someone holds up the X card frivolously or uses it for a ridiculous sort of thing? The example they gave, I believe, was what if someone disagreed with a woman adventuring, which is blatantly ridiculous, and they used the X card for that. Now, I think I can sort of see what they're aiming at, but if only an RPG had some sort of arbiter of common sense or some sort of human element in place that could sort of... Oh wait, it does. They're called the GM. I mean, GM, Games Master, DM, Dungeon Master. Clues in the name, people. If you're in charge of the game, you're also in charge of how the X card mechanic is implemented. Now, if someone held up an X card and it did seem a bit of a sort of an obviously sort of touch and go situation, I wouldn't ask for an explanation. Whereas if someone was like, oh, I'm going to play a female character, and someone immediately went X card, then I'd be like, hold on a sec, could we just discuss this for a minute? And if the person so strongly objected to there being a female character, to be honest, I'd probably ask them to leave the game and go and get their money back if they were at the convention or something like that. But that's just my feelings on it. Anyway, that's my Monday moan for today, talking about the X card. I think it's a great idea, both for players to ensure that they can get involved with the game, and as a little bit of extra insurance and freedom for the GM, really. Get in touch, let me know what you think. You can email me at reddicediaries@gmail.com, or you can get on the Anchor app and leave me a voicemail message. I really do enjoy listening to those. Until I see you next time, take care, and whatever you're playing, have fun.